Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe and the second half of my nonverbal read of the manager of the Cecil Hotel featured in the recent documentary on Netflix, Crime Scene. Today's video is going to be addressing some of the more important questions that she was asked and that she addressed during the documentary, along with a special look at an interview carried out by Entertainment Tonight in which she has less time to prepare and should optimistically provide a more accurate nonverbal read, especially around some of those hot topic questions. Before we begin the actual analysis, I want to be able to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Audible. Now, let's be real, most of you know who and what Audible is and does, but just in case you have not ever heard of Audible, think of it this way. Audible is an excellent source of audiobooks, podcasts, and original entertainment for you to be able to enjoy at any time with their downloadable features. Each month, members will receive one free credit that can be used towards any audiobook or podcast or original content in their library. My personal suggestion for you, especially if you're interested in the content here on this channel, is the Dictionary of Body Language by Joe Navarro. He's an ex-FBI agent and has created an excellent collection of various nonverbal tells and what they mean. So if you would like to be able to understand and decode nonverbal communication better, I suggest you check out his audiobook. I have been using Audible for years now, and I greatly appreciate it and have built a very large collection of audio content, both for learning and entertainment. So you can start listening with a free 30-day Audible trial and get full access to thousands and thousands of all-you-can-listen audiobooks, original entertainment, and podcast included in the Plus catalog. Visit audible.com/observe or text observe to 500 500. Thanks again to Audible for sponsoring this video, but without further ado, let's dive into the analysis.
So the elevator footage seems to really interest people, and that's where, a lot of this is kind of like caught up. Have you seen the elevator footage when people ask me? And well, of course I've seen the elevator footage. I provided the footage.
A little bit of a smirk there when she's saying I provided the footage. It's a slight flash of contempt. Once again, this is just based off of an intellectual or moral high ground. Whenever somebody asks somebody else a question over and over and over again, eventually the person who's being asked the question develops a little bit of contempt, regardless of how they feel towards the person who's asking the question. You can see that flashing across her face here, and that means that she's been asked this many, many times. Let's keep watching.
We provided all that to the police department. We gave them all. There was no way that could have been edited by somebody at the hotel.
It's interesting that she qualifies it this way. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some tonal things that she's doing. She's having some nervous, sarcastic laughter in there where she's saying that we provided all of the footage. And then she says specifically, there's no way that footage could have been edited by someone at the hotel, and she makes that qualifier in there. Not that it couldn't have been edited, but that it couldn't have been edited by someone at the hotel. And why is my question? Why is she specifically mentioning that? It could be because people are questioning, did somebody at the hotel edit it? That's very valid. But it also could be that she's making a specific qualifier, that nobody at the hotel could have edited it. Not that it hasn't been edited, but nobody at the hotel could have edited it. And that's important to note. Let's keep watching and see if that fleshes out in any way.
People choose to believe that somehow, we did that. That's their choice.
That is our choice. We can believe and we can choose to search out why this footage seems suspicious. Now, I have a background in video on many levels, not the least of which is here, but also professionally as well. And I know for a fact that footage does appear to be edited. I'm not sure about the frame rates or the timestamps, but even in just the way that it's flowing with the elevator door shutting and glitching at a certain point where nowhere else does that specific glitch happen, that's not common during footage. If there's a glitch at a specific point, there has to be a reason for it 9 times out of 10. Now, it is possible that maybe it was just a digital glitch, but it doesn't seem so, especially since the oddly edited timestamp doesn't support an unedited version. It seems to be tampered with on some level. Now, she didn't show any deception leakage while she was speaking about this, but she also kind of tried to skirt around it with her specific phrasing of nobody at the hotel edited that footage or could have edited that footage. And that just raises questions in my mind and absolutely opens the door for me to want to ask more questions towards her. But let's keep watching this part of the interview and then we'll just continue unpacking things from there.
He walked into my office and he told me that Elisa Lam was in our water tank. I started thinking to myself, what?
So during that time where she's saying that Elisa Lam was in our water tank, her eyebrows remain motionless. As we've established, she has likely had Botox, so that makes it to where her eyebrows will not function or emote in the way that we would like to be able to see. But her mouth does, and you can see that in a slightly downward motion of the corners of her mouth, which is a leakage of a somber or perhaps sad expression that is appropriate. However, it doesn't reach her eyes, so it comes across to us as the audience as perhaps fake or forced. And that is quite literally because it's not synchronized across her face.
How could somebody be in a water tank for 19 days? You know, water people are drinking, people are bathing out of. How is it possible? Before calling the police, I did call my mother and let her know that, that something bad had happened and to get ready.
So right there at the end, you could see the expression that her eyes has across her entire face. It's this oddly blank yet intense expression. That is what the synchronized expression of her face is. So that means that when she's smiling and it doesn't reach her eyes, that's desynchronized. That means that when she's frowning and it doesn't reach her eyes, it's desynchronized. And that indicates to me that psychologically speaking, there is a lack of emotional relation to what is occurring. And I have to ask why. Why is there not an emotional connection to it? Why are all of these emotions that she's portraying being forced? Why are they desynchronized? What's going on in her psychological processing that's causing her nonverbal communication to display so oddly, so desynchronized? Let's continue watching the footage to see if that unearths, and we'll talk about why that might be some here at the end of the video.
After Elisa Lam was found in the water tank upstairs, the interest in the hotel was just absolutely through the roof. And it was like that from the beginning.
Here's an interesting note. She says that once she was found, the interest in the hotel went through the roof, and it was like that from the beginning, but she has no joy in that. And that means to me that obviously this is not good interest in the hotel that she's receiving. We know from the first video that she obviously enjoys people being interested in the Cecil Hotel, but not this interest. She doesn't want people looking at it critically. She only wants people to look at it well. Now, there could be a couple reasons for this. One, she could be a business owner, and obviously a business owner doesn't want people looking negatively at their business. Or it could be that she just doesn't want people looking into the shadier parts of the business itself. We don't know what the answer to that is yet, and so far we just have to observe a little bit more to be able to see if maybe that shows itself through more of her tells.
It's hard to wrap your head around how she died in that water tank. No one around. Not be discovered for quite some time. It's terrible.
Interesting facial expressions during this. So during this time, you would expect there to be some disgust, maybe some sadness, some grief, anything along those lines, maybe even fear, but there isn't. The thing that you do see is a similar expression to earlier in the last video where there's an intensity, there's an interest, there's an engagement on her face. Her eyes aren't showing any fear, they're not showing any anxiety, they're not showing any suppressed negative emotions, they're only showing almost an interest, an intrigue. My question then again is, why is that? Why is she not showing any subconscious leakage of any kind centered around the emotions that you would expect somebody to be seeping while speaking about a traumatic event like this? Once again, this could be because of dissociation, it could be because of psychopathy, it could be because of sociopathy, and it could be because of some other things as well that I'll talk about in a bit.
I know there are a lot of questions about the water tank and how she got up there, but the answer is quite simple of how she got up there.
This is interesting right away before she continues on this little blip that she's talking about. Her tone has changed. Her pitch has gone up and her tone is very thin. It's very, very fragile. It's very sharp. And that means that there's stress. There's stress behind her words here. There's a certain level of stress that made it to where she physiologically changed her tone. And whether this is conscious or subconscious is another question. I would be lending towards the subconscious level. But along with that, not just her tone adding stress to it, she adds this odd repetition verbally, which you can hear here.
How she got up there, but the answer is quite simple of how she got up there.
So she says that twice, right? She says it the first time and then she says it the second time, and it's this reiteration that also counts as a red flag for me. Why is she reiterating that specifically? There has to be a reason for it, otherwise she wouldn't have done it. The single time of stating it would have been just fine. But she didn't state it the single time. And my question is why? Why is she having a higher pitched tone? Why is there more strain behind that tone? And why is she doing this odd verbal reiteration where there doesn't need to be any? This is a suspicious cluster of nonverbal and verbal communication that just serves as a red flag for me. Again, there's something around this that is suspicious that I need to know.
I believe that she took the exterior fire escape. Is there proof? No, there's no proof. But
okay, so she says, I believe that she took the exterior fire escape. That's actually good on her part, because if she said she took the exterior fire escape, that means that she knows that she took the exterior fire escape, which then means that she knows more information that she's not telling anybody. But she says, I believe she took the exterior fire escape. That's good on her. Either one, she's being authentic or she's covering her tracks well. I'm hoping that she's being authentic and that there's not some dark conspiracy behind this, but there's always that other possibility. Let's watch to see if either of those really clarify.
if you open the door, an alarm starts going off at the front desk in the lobby. So do you think that we would just have, you know, an alarm going off when we're running a business? You have to have a key to turn it off.
Interesting. This doesn't flow well, and I'm wondering if maybe the people who made the documentary edited it in this area to be able to make it flow the way they wanted it to, or perhaps, but the sentence structure itself doesn't really flow well. She asks a question, and then she just states the answer to her own question, which is, you have to turn it off with a key. Now, this is all assuming that Elisa went up there herself, went through that doorway herself, and then did it that way, or perhaps some other person who doesn't have a key. That's not what people are thinking. People are thinking that somebody at the hotel has something to do with this. That's the big question. So the key is obsolete, because if somebody's working at the hotel, they'll likely have the key. So her clarification on this is unneeded, and it's not really helping her case at all here. Furthermore, other people who have gone to the hotel have tested that to see if they pushed open that door, would it set off an alarm of any sort? And they didn't notice anything. They pushed open the door and nobody came, nobody was notified, and they didn't hear any alarm. Now, it's possible that perhaps maybe somebody came later after everything else, or there was a glitch and the alarm didn't go off, or those people that are telling that story are just BSing us. There is that possibility, but there are still plenty of ways to poke holes in the statement that she has just given us. It's not satisfactory, and it's far from eliminating of the hotel having something to do with Elisa Lam's death.
The night before she was going to check out, we relocated her to her own dedicated room. That seemed to be a better option for her. And then later, she proceeds to go down to the lobby and does, I don't even know what you would call it.
She's about to start talking about what she does here, obviously, but I want to point out the tonal differences in the pitch and the tone from here where she's exemplifying words, but there's no strain behind it, as opposed to earlier when she's talking about the various ways that she could have gotten to the roof and the strain behind that. There's a definite tone difference. This is a more relaxed tone, and before it's more strained. So that means before, when we were suspicious, why was there strain? This is a contrast to reaffirm that there was definitely something going on with that story centered around her going up to the roof. Just makes me ask more questions.
Like Move, where she says that I'm crazy, but so is LA.
She's using nonverbal illustrators here, talking about her recollection of what Elisa did with her arms and so on and so forth. That means that her body language can be synchronized, and she can use things like illustrators, so we can add that to her baseline as her possible repertoire. So if that pops up in another area irregularly, we need to make note of it and continue on.
At the time, we didn't really look too much into it. I mean, this is the Cecil Hotel. It's just one thing out of the day that happens. You just move on.
So this is a point that she's made, and it's a good point. She's making a good point here, but it's also pushing us to question again, why is she staying there? Why is she there? Why does she stick around at a place where that sort of behavior is so common that it doesn't raise any red flags for anybody? It's just kind of weird that somebody walks into the middle of a big area, in a public area, throws their arms up and yells, LA is crazy, but so am I, in a very sporadic way, and she's been causing problems in her room before. It's just odd that somebody would be like, this is the place that I want to stay. And that they would be like, I want to stay here so long that the only thing that's going to get me to stop this job is the entire hotel has to be shut down. So let's keep watching.
You know, there were no regulations at that point where you had to lock your water tank. I'm sure that people are locking their water tanks now, but they weren't then.
This is in defense of the hotel. There weren't any regulations, and her pitch is up. This is adding energy to her tone, and she's actually emoting across her face. And once again, this is only related to the hotel. This is more emotion than we saw throughout all of the talk about Elisa Lam. Well, the hotel is here again, the conversation topic of the hotel, and suddenly energy, emotion, and passion centered around a very dark, creepy, eerie hotel. Interesting. Interesting to say the least.
As a manager, how far do you go as far as taking precautions to know if people are okay? Her behavior was bizarre, but not enough to be, calling the officials in. And, I would have to ask myself, if I had called 911, would anybody have come? A lot of times...
Very accurate point. And the narrowing of the eyes equals suspicion, and the furrowing of the brow equals determination. That's a very accurate point. In this area, there's so much crime that if somebody called with a complaint about somebody acting kind of weird according to their standards, would the police have bothered? Would they have bothered coming there? Would anybody have bothered coming there when they're on a road, an area, a block, an entire segment of a city that's just known for extreme criminal activity? Would they have? That's an accurate question. That's a very fair question and a valid one from her, just to take note of.
When you do call the police, they don't even answer. There's so much going on in this area. There's this huge problem. It's just so overwhelming for the police and for everybody involved.
Another point of a negative emotion, and her face is lighting up. Her intensity is going up. There is a slight joy expression in her eyes, aka the sparkle that we see, and she's even smiling slightly, centered around a very negative connotation, very negative instance in general, adding, once again, to the question of why.
What happened to Elisa Lam is horrendous, but it isn't because of the hotel. We were not responsible for her death. We're just not responsible.
And this is the ending part of her on Netflix. Now we have the Entertainment Tonight interview that we're about to get to help add to this, but she believes that they're not responsible. At least from this little teeny tiny segment here, that they're not responsible. But if you look at the corners of her nose here, she has a slight disgust, perhaps disgust expression slipping in there. And my question is, what's that in regards to? Is that disgust in regards to people blaming them and she really doesn't feel like the hotel is at all responsible? Or is that disgust to her own possible lie and saying that we're not responsible and she knows it's not true and her subconscious is kind of betraying her on this front? Both of those are still possibilities. The Entertainment Tonight side of things might help clarify this a little bit here.
So given, though, that there were deaths happening at the hotel, that it wasn't a seedy area, what made you stay working there so long?
I loved my job. I did. I worked with amazing people. I mean, still, I talk to a lot of these people still today. I mean, there was so many employees that have been there 10 to over 30 years. I mean, 35 years. We had a great team, and I learned so much while I was working there. It was my first hotel job. I mean, it was quite an introduction, but I enjoyed it. And in fact, the only reason I left is because the hotel closed.
So this is an important question. Why? Why on earth would you stay there? The interviewer asks a great question, obviously, and she says, I love my job. Now, some nonverbal things that I want to point out that we established in her baseline earlier is the head shake. A lot of head shaking is happening, and she continues that head shake throughout all of this interview, so it makes it obsolete. We cannot rely on the head shake very well during this time unless it increases a lot. If it's a large head shake rather than just like the smaller one that she's doing like this, if it's like a sudden increase, then that is still a spike in her nonverbal communication. All in all, though, we have to take that head shake as part of her baseline. But she's smiling, she's emoting on her face in regards to this job, and she says some important things that I think play into why she may have stuck around. I don't know her background, I don't know her history, so there are some blank spots in the storyline as far as I'm concerned. But the words that she said here are that this was my first hotel job. And she said earlier that she stepped into the position of manager of a hotel, a very large hotel in LA. And I think that may have been part of it. She said that the hotel is her kingdom, so she felt very much in charge and overruling all of it. And this was her first hotel job. I don't know if it's her first management job, but it's her first hotel job, which is odd. You can't really just apply for a manager position anywhere if you don't have experience in that position or in that field. So it's odd that that's the case here, and it could have been part of why she liked it so much is the control factor. She was in control all the time. Who was going to challenge her? Nobody else wanted that job, so it was her job. She got to do what she wanted, how she wanted, and that could have been part of what kept her around for so long despite all of the negatives. I don't feel like that's the entire picture, but I think that is part of the picture. But that's just addressing her attitude towards the hotel. It's not really addressing anything towards Elisa Lam. Let's keep watching for that part.
What was that time just like for you personally, mentally, emotionally?
It was really hard, I mean, beginning with, it was a loss. I mean, somebody passed away, in a tragic way, the circumstances of, discovering how she died and processing all that was, hard. It was hard on our entire team, and also, again, and you have to remember, I mean, I was the general manager, so, I was responsible for making sure that our employees were getting through the process and all that. I mean, there wasn't anything easy about it.
Interesting. A lot of you-knows. So many you-knows. Just way too many you-knows, as a matter of fact. But she's going through, and that verbal stuttering is odd to me because she's having to process how she felt about it. For many people, they would be able to say, it was extremely difficult. I had a hard time, it was exhausting, so on and so forth. But when she's asked, what was your emotional state? It was, and this is how her answer goes until she reaches the part where once again it's talking about her team, the hotel, her leadership. Then she lights up and everything flows pretty well. But it's just odd that when her emotions are being addressed towards the situation, she has so much trouble talking about it. By the very end, she says, and it was hard, but that it was hard, like, no shit. Obviously, it should be hard. You're in the Cecil Hotel in downtown LA on Skid Row. I think hard is a no shit side of things. We were wanting to know about the emotions earlier, and she hides them. She verbally skirts around them and hides them. Fascinating.
What about the elevator video? That is a question I still have. People wonder, are there pieces?
Ooh, what about the elevator video? And you can look at her face and see the contempt slip in. She's once again feeling contempt in regards to that elevator video. Is this because she's been asked again and again and again about the elevator video, or is it because she knows something centered around that elevator video that we do not know, that we as the public do not know? It's hard to decipher that, but what we do know from her expression is that she does have intellectual or moral superiority in this situation. In this case, it wouldn't be moral. There's nothing moral about this, but it is intellectual. So we know she knows something that we don't know. Interesting, right?
Is missing from it? Is it edited? Where's this missing minute? What do you say to all that?
It's absolutely unedited. I mean, I handed everything over firsthand. I'm the only one that would have had access to the footage. So, I mean, I did see that in the documentary where they talk about that, and absolutely not. I mean, we were very transparent with the police, and the footage, I don't think anybody could deny is, it's strange, of course. I mean, she's acting very, strange on the video. But as far as like any tampering or, a missing minute, I don't think so.
Man, she's having a really hard time with this. So verbally speaking, she starts using absolutely too many times. Absolutely not, absolutely this. It's an over-the-top description of something that doesn't need that over-the-top description. A simple no, we didn't do anything with it, we gave it over to the police, there was nothing we did. That would have been fine, but absolutely not. We absolutely didn't do this. There was no possible way. It's just over the top. We don't need all that extra detail. Now that could be because she's really desperately just trying to convince people who aren't listening that that's the case. But it's also a common tactic in people who are lying to be able to really try to hammer home what they're saying so that you really have to believe them. And both of those are possible. Combining it with a lot of the other information that we gathered from earlier in the interview, especially across the Netflix one, I'm leaning towards there might be something else that's going on. There might actually be. Otherwise, why would there be such strain in her voice around certain hot topics? There's always multiple explanations for these things. From this point on, I'm not going to give you the two sides. It could be this or it could be this. I'm going to assume that you know both sides from this point on. But it is still interesting, and I'm finding it more and more suspicious. And then at the very end, she fails to really wrap up that sentence. It just falls apart verbally. Her mental processing doesn't carry out the rest of that sentence very well. Another question is, why?
Is there a minute missing from it?
I mean, I saw that in the documentary where, people are thinking like, has this been tampered with, or, absolutely not. No.
No, I'm close to believing that this is a lie. So is there a minute missing from it? And she immediately falls apart verbally, and she's shaking her head. We can't really pay attention to that. Her blinking increases. She uses the absolutely not, and then she at first tries to divert the question. Oh, I saw that in the documentary, blah, 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 blah. Blinking, shrugging, all of these insecurity gestures, and then at the very end, she hammers it home with the absolutely not again. It just seems like an overcompensation with a lot of red flags non-verbally in there as well. I wouldn't believe this statement. It doesn't hold water in my eyes non-verbally. I don't believe her. I do believe that there is the high possibility that there's something missing from that video. I have no idea what. Not a clue. No idea. I'm not trying to be an internet sleuth on this, as the Netflix documentary calls it. I'm just talking about her body language. All that I'm saying is that she is flashing a lot of suspicious nonverbal communication during this time, and her verbal is falling apart as well. And that all lends me to believe that she's probably lying in this area.
If you can take me back to that moment, and when you find out that her body is in the water tank, it's shocking. What was it like for you when you learned about that?
I mean, equally as shocking. I'll never forget, meeting with the health department. I had the health department in my office, and I explained, what had happened, and they were equally as shocked too. They'd never dealt with anything like that before. I mean, it was hard to process. There was, and I was drinking the same water. I mean, we were all drinking the same water.
Fascinating. So this seems to be fairly synchronized, very stilted all the way through, obviously, but that's probably nerves. This area sounds like nerves to me rather than deceit, rather than that question before where she completely fell apart. This just sounds like nerves. But then it gets to the part where it's a really gross area, really gross, talking about drinking water and bathing in water. Again, that a body was decaying, and that's very gross. It's a very gross subject, and she doesn't flash any disgust. She doesn't seep anything negative. The only expression that we see is a smile and a lighting up of the eyes, a widening of the eyes, and an intensity that comes again. That this is now a repeat offender for her. This odd cluster of almost joy or interest and intrigue centered around things that are very, very gross. And I think this plays into her entire psychology. Let's talk about that in a moment, right after this little interview.
Can what did the health department tell you to do? What did you have to do after that?
Oh, we did everything they asked us to do. I mean, they did, a series of testing, and, the water wasn't contaminated, come to find out. And I guess that isn't uncommon based on the circumstances. There were a lot of steps. We had to close the hotel altogether, and relocate everybody that was there. I mean, there was a lot involved.
So that segment there is showing you what she can do non-verbally when speaking. She can answer well. She can answer on a clean flow. The verbiage can flow, the body language can kind of flow, but it's just showing that during these other times that we've noticed, the other ones where there's massive positive spikes in her nonverbal baseline, it's showing that those are more accurate. Those reads that we got from that are going to be more accurate because we can see that she can behave and speak normally. Makes you ask, why were those other ones there?
What do you hope people take away from the series, if anything? What do you want them to walk away with?
I just hope their questions are answered, and at the end of the day, I hope there's healing for everybody, I mean, at the end of the day, somebody passed away here, and, I think that it will answer a lot of questions.
And I do want to wrap up on that note for that interview. And it's true, at the end of the day, somebody did pass away, and that is the most important thing here, is that somebody's life was lost, and regardless of how it was tragic. And I want everybody who's watching this to be respectful of the family. Don't ask them any questions. Let them grieve and give them space. This is a tragic loss for them. And anybody who knows Elisa, the friends, just let them all grieve. That's very important here. This video is here to help educate and help reveal some of what a person's nonverbal communication can say during various times. But first and foremost, my condolences have to go out to the family and friends of Elisa Lam. Many people want justice for Elisa. They don't want Elisa to be a victim of some crime, of some cover-up of anything. They don't want that. They want the answers as to why that is. Her life was precious, and it is now gone, and we don't know why. We just don't. So I understand where people are really driving at this answer. Why? Why is it this way? And to be frank, I don't believe that there is a massive cover-up within the hotel. I don't think there is. I can't say that for sure, though. And unfortunately, what I've seen from the manager doesn't help me believe that. It doesn't help me believe that everything there was straightforward and upstanding. It seems as though something shady was going on. And speaking on the manager herself, there are some interesting psychological factors that could be in play here. And the only thing that really answered my questions well, there's a few things. Either one, it's this control, this idea of ruling over, this kingdom aspect that she appreciated so much that she didn't want to go anywhere else. This could be because maybe of job history. Maybe she's a terrible employee elsewhere, so that's why she couldn't be a manager anywhere else. It could just be that. Or it could be that she loves that control so much that she'll stick around through whatever else. That she loves to be in control. There's that possibility. And in fact, I do believe that that is at least part of it, but that doesn't explain everything non-verbally with her. That doesn't explain these areas of interest in the gruesome. And this could be explained by an obsessive morbid curiosity. Everybody has morbid curiosity, right? It's built into us. It's a part of humanity. I might do a video as to the psychology behind morbid curiosity, or you can Google it yourself and see. But everybody has that and it's normal. But it's when it becomes obsessive. It's when it becomes a part of you that you need, rather than you just can't look away, you want to find. And that's where I feel like she may be slipping into. Is this due to working in an environment that's so intense and so stressful and so morbid all the time that it becomes a part of her and she needs more of it? Maybe. It could be. There's not really an actual scientific term that I could track down for this, but many people refer to people that have an interest in that side of things, an obsessive morbid interest, as either phobophilic, which is the love of fear, or it could be an area of OCD. I am not a psychologist. I want to make this very clear. This all right here is just me giving you an opinion, not diagnosing whatsoever. There are many other people that could do that far better than me. I'm just giving an opinion here. So just keep that in mind and take this opinion kind of at the level that you will. But it does seem interesting to me that she has such an interest in the morbid, and that she's stuck around at a hotel so filled with it for so long. And whether or not that tape is tampered with, I think it was, but I don't know if it was by her. Interesting thing, I don't really like the way that the law enforcement acted during this either. The specific ones on the Netflix documentary, not just the body of law enforcement, but the ones that we got to look at, they acted interesting to me as well. Would you like me to look at the investigators and law enforcement from the documentary as well? We could make this a little bit longer of a series. You'll have to let me know in the comments below, because I would be happy to if you would like to. But that wraps up my analysis. Long story short, something went on with that footage, and the manager of the Cecil Hotel has some very interesting psychological aspects that might leave you feeling a little bit unsettled. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Did I miss something? Is there something that I didn't see, or a bit of information that I wasn't able to dig up? Let me know in the comments below. I am happy to hear more about this. I am always relentlessly curious, and I always want to find the answer why. So if you have a better way for me to be able to do that, please fill me in on that. Also, if you have a different opinion, let me know, and maybe we'll find a good discussion that will allow us to all come to the truth. Down at the end of this, I don't care if I'm wrong. I care if I get to the truth. That's what I care about. So, hit those comments up, and we'll see what goes on from there. I want to give another shout out to Audible for this. Thank you so much for sponsoring this video. If you are watching and you haven't joined Audible, what are you doing? You can have a 30-day free trial and a free credit to download one of the best nonverbal audiobooks by one of the leading nonverbal experts in the world for free. That's all on you. Just follow the link in the description below. Again, that's www.audible.com/observe, or you can text observe to 500 to start your free trial. I highly suggest it. I've been using it for years. If you like this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already so you could see more videos that will be coming out 2 times a week in the future. Hit the bell notification because I don't know why not. But But without further ado, that's all that I've got for today. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are. And I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.